I have a lot of books that I am currently reading right now. I'm juggling a few different ones, some recommended by you, dear viewers. In fact, I think someone recommended this debunking book. And that actually led me to the video that I'm doing right now. This is another commentary video brought on by my frustrations with the things that are happening in the world as we speak. So if you stick around towards the end of the video, I'm going to throw out some commentary that for the people with the patience, and I'll have some interesting thoughts in keeping with the channel about some world events later on in the video. But for now, I wanted to get some things off my chest, and I've done a video about this in the member section, actually probably close to 3 years ago, about fraternities and sororities and secret clubs and that sort of thinking. And I've done a lot of thinking lately with the war in Iran and all the stuff happening with that. And I realize there's a lot of correlation, a lot of similarities between the thinking about sports teams, the way we view, the way a lot of the general public views professional sports and even amateur or college sports or whatever, and the way we view modern warfare. And I know for a lot of you, you're gonna be like, well, duh, that's pretty simple. But what that has allowed for is this mentality of, especially with, let's take a regional sports team like the Dallas Cowboys. Back when I was growing up, this will definitely date me, but Roger Staubach was the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. And, you know, even me not even having any interest in football, I knew that. And, you know, he was the star of the team and all the things. And I remember there's some other Too Tall Jones and some of those guys. But now, whether or not those guys were actually truly representative of Dallas County is another matter entirely. But the point was, you knew who the team was. They were wearing your jerseys and all that. But the idea was, it was kind of an extension of your local sports team, like the college team or the local high school team. There was a lot of effort put into making you feel like these were your guys. So obviously, I've never met Roger Staubach. I have no opinion of the guy whatsoever. But there was a lot of effort put into making us project our values onto these people and say, they're your guys. So then when they play the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know, that's our guy sticking it to the Steelers or whatever. And that was a big rivalry, again, back some 45, 46 years ago. And I say all that to say that modern warfare has benefited greatly from that. And I don't think it's any accident that modern warfare and people's attitudes about both government and representative democracy and our democratic republic, and the way we view both our government and the way we view warfare, has really benefited from a lot of the sports kind of attitude of the blind loyalty to a jersey or to a team. You know, even when those teams get shuffled all around, when the Dallas Cowboys trade, you know, player X for another guy from upstate in, you know, Washington State or something like that, he becomes our guy. And now we hate the other guy for leaving the team. And it has nothing to do with their actual abilities as football players. It has everything to do with who's on our team. They're wearing our jerseys, so we cheer for our jerseys. And then there's so much switcheroo that in the end, the only thing you're really left with is the team identity is literally just the jersey, the colors, the branding. That's it. There's no actual regional connection to the team at all. And that goes also in college sports too, where colleges will pull the best athletes from wherever and assemble a team. And there's no actual connection to your, you know, town or region other than just they're wearing our jersey, so we cheer them on. And I've thought about this a lot lately with watching a lot of people who I agree with on a lot of topics, a lot of things like the Epstein files and a lot of the corruption in our government. A lot of people that are even aware of things beyond what I've stumbled onto, and that will post all kinds of stuff on social media about weather modification and, just all these corrupt things happening in our government. But with Iran, it's still, they're wearing our jerseys, so we got to cheer them on. And that really got me thinking about, what's at the core of that, because that has really subverted our society. And you think about a lot of the pundit shows of the last 30 and even 40 years, if you really examine a lot of these pundit shows, especially back in, again, I'm going to date myself, but when Rush Limbaugh rose to prominence in the early 90s, Rush Limbaugh, a lot of people really considered him kind of this golden boy of the conservative movement, that he was out there, sticking it to the liberals. And he was one of the first ones that, once they did away with fairness doctrine, was just, militantly, unapologetically conservative guy. But the funny thing was that I noticed as I would listen to Rush Limbaugh, and I was never a fan, I just thought the guy was just kind of an idiot. But what I noticed with him is there were certain issues that I would hear a lot of conservative people, and he became a big thing when I was living in Lubbock. And at the time, I really wasn't political at all much, and I didn't really pay attention to much of that at all. But the values, the kind of conservative values that I heard a lot spoken by a lot of my peers in Lubbock, Texas, I would hear echoed by Rush Limbaugh. But what I started to see was, if you just switched off, and I know I've probably mentioned this before in some other videos, so bear with me, but if you were to switch off Rush Limbaugh for at the height of his popularity back, say 98, 99, 2000, around there, if you were to switch off Rush Limbaugh and just go based on your own objective values, when you turned him back on, you would be shocked at where he actually stood. And that's when I started to realize that because I started playing this little game in my own mind when I was working at a few jobs where I had coworkers that had to listen to Rush Limbaugh. And I started playing this kind of mental game of trying to see where he would stand on certain things. And I started realizing, wait, you can't predict it based on actual conservative and definitely not Christian values. He would be all over the place. But that's when it really started to hit me. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to articulate this for another probably 10 or 15 years. But I realized that the whole point of guys like Rush Limbaugh, and I'm not giving anybody on the left a pass either, MSNBC, all their, I'm trying to think if there's a female commentator, and she's right on the tip of my tongue on the left, that is a good example of this. But all of them, their goal, their actual job is to steer you into these certain lanes, into these partisan lanes, so that the debate stops being something like, why are we going to war with Iran? We don't need to do this. Then it becomes, are we fighting the war right? It's not. So the people on the left stop addressing, should we even be in the war or whatever. And we saw this a lot in the war in Iraq, where people on the left started arguing over, was it being fought the right way, or how to address certain things, not whether or not, like, this whole thing is and there was a common mantra used in a lot of both left and right medias, but when the boots are on the ground, we got to support the troops. We got to support it. We got to back the troops. And, we stopped talking about all that, peacenik stuff, once the boots are on the ground. And it's like, no, that's actually when it really needs to pick up, because as somebody who, a lot of my peers were deployed, I actually ETS'd right before my unit got deployed to Iraq, and it was Iraq, whatever. Somebody said that the other day about my pronunciation. I guess a lot of people do that, calling it Iran or Iraq. And they were saying, do you pronounce it Italy? And I might just start doing that. But anyway, but when I got out, just as that was starting, and I was actually concerned, the term stop loss had not been introduced yet, but I was genuinely concerned that something like that was going to be employed. And sure enough, it was just a few months later, they started the whole stop loss thing to stop people from leaving the military to keep them in so they could be deployed. But my first thought was, like, these guys have no business being over there. Like, I want my peers back here. We have no business being over there in this war. But back to the football team analogy is I see that a lot now where any even consideration of what, hey, is this something that we should really be doing? Are the Iranians really even posing a threat? Are they even an enemy that we should be focused on? Is met with this attitude of, well, our guys are wearing our jerseys, they're wearing the other jersey, so obviously they're the villain. So in that respect, the military might becomes, again, just who's powerful enough to wield it, who's got the most power wielding the most power. They're obviously the good guy, and the person they're hitting is obviously the bad guy. And that led me back again to the sorority fraternity thing. Now, personally, I thought that was one of the dumbest things ever. I remember I never ran in those circles. And my second year in college, I had some friends that were musing about joining some of the social clubs. I went to a Christian university, and they wouldn't call them fraternities and sororities. They called them social clubs, and that was supposed to make it more palatable to the Christian audience. But they were Greek clubs, used the same. It was all the same. It was fraternities and sororities, exactly the same thing. Same kind of hazing, just BS ritual kind of stuff. That I remember stuff like that would leak out that was very sexualized. I mean, even at a Christian school, some of it was very heavily sexualized, humiliation rituals. And it's like, why are we doing this? This is stupid. And I use the proverbial we, or the royal we, because I wanted no part in that. But I had some friends that were interested in that. And I remember very distinctly around that time, because I played a few different musical instruments. And at the time, there goes the clock. It's 10 o'clock. And I gotta let the clock finish its business. But at the time, I was big into performing and doing my thing with all that. So I didn't realize that some of the fraternities kind of had their eye on me. And some of the guys with one of the fraternities came out and kind of interviewed me for this. And I didn't realize that's what it was until later. And it happened with a couple of different groups where I was kind of being vetted, and I didn't realize I was being vetted. And in hindsight, which makes it even funnier, because I didn't hold back about, I don't buy my friends. Like, the people I hang out with because we have similar values. I'm not going to go on skin color. I'm not going to go on, give them an IQ. Here, fill out this IQ test. And if you're of this mental capacity or greater, then we'll hang out. Or, again, it's not, he's wearing the right jersey, so therefore he has to be my friend. Like, that's just dumb thinking. And I remember telling some of these guys back in college, like I'll hang out with who I want to hang out with. I'm not, that's just stupid, grade school kind of thinking. Like, if we agree about our worldview and we have similar interests and values, we'll hang out. If we don't, then go your way in peace and leave me alone. You do your thing, I'll do mine. But the fraternity and sorority people could not do that. That was counter to everything they were about, because everything was, now you're in this group. And I'll never forget, it was one of the most ridiculous things. I had a few different friends that the first semester, we were all thick as thieves and we'd just hang out and do whatever. But as soon as they pledged this club or whatever, then suddenly they couldn't hang out with us anymore. And they were real kind of weird about when you'd be like, hey dude, where have you been? What's going on? And they'd get real standoffish. And it took me a while, and another friend of mine that had to explain to me, it's like, dude, it's because they're in such and such club, and that club doesn't talk to that club. And I'm like, really? Really? Is this really a thing? And if you're on this channel, it's probably because you were in that same same bent of humanity where you said that's stupid. I don't want to hang out with that. And I realize there's exceptions to that. I have plenty of friends that joined clubs. It was never that big of a deal, and they didn't let the clubs dictate their existence. But a lot of people did. That was definitely in the minority. And the sad thing is, that is what mass media does with us. That's the whole point, really, of mass media. And I mean that in terms of social media, television, internet, radio, whatever, all the things, is all designed to subvert your natural discernment and say, you are not capable of figuring out who your own friends are. So you let us tell you. We're the experts, and we're going to sort that out for you. So just like the fraternities and the sororities, they're going to tell you who your friends are now. And that's who you're going to pay attention to. You can't trust your own friendships to your own discernment and your own intellect. You got to let somebody else do that. And again, we see that in also with a lot of the cancel culture. And I know cancel culture used to be almost everybody pointed to people on the left end of the political spectrum. But that is definitely a thing of both sides. I saw that big time through the Second Gulf War. Anyone who expressed any problems with the Second Gulf War got excluded. And I experienced that firsthand, and I was like, well, good. Like if I get shunned by my own church because I follow the Prince of Peace, then so be it. I will be okay with that. I will rest well tonight knowing that I was shunned for following the King of Kings. But anyway, to bring this to a close and bring this full circle, I really think this is sadly a huge problem in our culture, is this idea of letting experts decide who our friends are, who our affiliations are, and who's right or wrong, who is our enemy or not. And I say all that because, and I realize I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, because if you're watching this channel, you are probably watching this channel because you've become frustrated with exactly those things. But that kind of mentality, that all of that only works because you allow someone else to decide your standards for you, that you no longer have objective standards. Because as I've said before in other commentary videos, if you have solid objective standards about your life and your existence, you will be all over the place to the other people around you. They will say, well, I thought you were on the left, or I thought you were on the right, or didn't you say blah, 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 blah? And you say, well, I don't like killing. So, I don't think, God hates hands that shed innocent blood. And there's not an asterisk by that. So that's where I'm at. But you'll find that if you stick to your principles, that you'll find that the left and the right will shift all around you, and you'll start to become, it's kind of like one of those magic eye puzzles. I don't know if any of you children of the 90s remember these posters that you could get in stores in the mall that looked like a bunch of just random, almost like static, and these weird shapes and all. But if you looked at it, if you stared at it just right, your eyes had to kind of focus on it in this weird way. And when you did, it suddenly became a three-dimensional image of like an airplane or, a person throwing a football. There were all these very simple images. But it was this cool trick that you had to teach your brain how to see. And it's very much that way when you start to actually have your own principles and your own, objective truth that you follow, and you don't let someone else tell you what that is. Again, you will see all those other things shifting around you. And if you truly follow, like, again, a Reagan conservative in 1982 would hardly recognize his own party now. And I'm not saying I'm for Reagan or any of that. I'm just saying that's how much these goalposts shift around over the years and change drastically. So I say all this to say, I think when we follow objective truth and when we set objective standards, and I think this is the importance of having something bigger than ourselves that we are fixed on, and be that our allegiance to God and however you want to view that. But if you are fixed on something, your focus is on something bigger than yourself, standards outside of you that you do not allow other people to tamper with, all those other things start to fall away. But the side effect is all the other people will get very mad when you don't cheer for the people in the right jersey. And that's the sad thing. It's like, it's so funny right now seeing Iranians burning statues of Baal and making these Lego videos about the Epstein files and all that. It's like, yeah, they're very right. Those are things we should be focused on. Those are things we should be upset about. And I'm not saying this as an excuse or anything for the Iranians or anything like that. I'm just saying, if we are following objective standards, we're not just going to cheer mindlessly for our jersey. And it's going to be, our world will become in some ways a lot simpler, but to the people around us, they're going to get very frustrated with us. And it's going to become, it gets very complicated to explain these standards to people outside of that are still cheering on mindlessly to the sports ball, the kind of sports ball mentality. But anyway, I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like I said, I am not, I learned really in the 2004 election was where I really realized just how fixed our whole system really was. And from that point on, I have never invested much. And even then, even before that, one of my grandfathers was very opposed to voting at all and just thought the whole system was corrupt. And the older I get, the more I think he was right on the money. So, and I do think, yes, we can change things, but we have to be solid and we have to make a difference in the things we can actually reach and be decent human beings. And most importantly, again, to bring it all full circle, we can't have that frat boy or sorority girl mentality of letting other people tell us who our friends should be, what's right, what's wrong, put little asterisks by things like, well, blessed are the peacemakers. Well, no, what are we talking about? Peacemakers. I mean, things like that, where suddenly we get these long-winded definitions and redefining of what all this stuff means instead of saying, no, that's objectively wrong and I refuse to go along with it. But our lives get better, but they also get, like I said, we definitely run into friction, and I definitely have seen that lately with a lot of people that I agree on a lot of things on, but the fact that I'm not cheering on what's happening in Iran, what do you want the Iranian protesters to die? So now I said at the beginning that if you stuck around, I was going to drop some other little bombs on you here. Quick synopsis of kind of what I think what's happening. And you're probably like, I don't want to hear what you have to say about any of this stuff, but if you waited this long, why not hear me out? I think in kind of a positive way, the one silver lining I see to all the crazy stuff happening in the world is I think the October 7th stuff, which I think was totally orchestrated and totally manufactured, was done because things were falling apart in Ukraine, and to get things back on the proper timeline, they just had to grin and bear it and just jump right in and go forward with what they were going to do. So I think there's been some hiccups in the plans. I don't think things have gone as smoothly as they were supposed to go, which is why I think we had October 7th, when I think they realized, wait, all this quagmire in Ukraine is wearing down the military machine. Before it wears out, we better use it for some other things. So then we have all the stuff in Gaza. And then, which brings us to Iran right now. And I think the same thing that happened there. I think that was... I think we have now been tricked into a situation that is designed to erode the potency of the U.S. military. And so while everybody's cheering this on, we're actually cheering on the depletion of our capabilities, which is scary in its implications. On a foe that did not attack us. This is a totally chosen conflict by anyone's definition. But more specifically, now this is the main thing I wanted to talk about, that I wanted to just get this out there on the record, because recently, last weekend, so this is Friday night right now as I'm recording this, last weekend was the big alleged pilot rescue. A pilot, I believe an F-15 pilot, was shot down over Iran, and there was allegedly this massive rescue effort to go in and rescue him. And some of the shows I've been listening to, some of the commentary has speculated that that might have actually been an effort by U.S. Special Forces to go after some of the Iranian nuclear materials. I have a little different opinion on that, and I think that what we saw was a botched false flag. I think what they were trying to do, and this is pure speculation, this is just me thinking out loud about what I see from that, because the two C-130s with the Little Bird helicopters and all that stuff that then got bombed on the ground to destroy all this evidence allegedly, which there's still a lot of weird stuff about that, and how many people did or did not die and all those things. So the more of that I see, the more I'm thinking that there was an attempt at a false flag attack where Special Forces personnel were going to co-opt an Iranian launcher or something to that effect, or maybe they even brought one in. Maybe they had an old Scud system sitting around from the first Gulf War and unload that in the desert by way of a C-130 and then fire it off at a country that has thus far not wanted to get involved, and then suck NATO in under Article 5. Or load up an antiquated ballistic missile or something with a chemical or biological warhead, fire that at an expendable target, and use that as a pretext to go take this battle to a greater level. I don't know any of that for sure, but I think that recent rescue effort, or whatever it was, definitely deserves close scrutiny and close watching. So anyway, but in the meantime, love your people around you, love the people around you, love your friends and neighbors, and it is kind of sad. I will say this is a lonely world if you do what I said earlier in the video. If you apply objective standards to your own existence and you refuse to just get moved around by the mob or by the crowd or by the sorority fraternity kind of mentality, it is a somewhat lonely existence, because you'll find sometimes you'll be at odds with your own family and you'll lose friends over it. And sometimes it's a matter of just sitting, waiting, and the friends and relatives come back around, and sometimes they apologize, sometimes they don't. But I will say, for those of you out there, I have some happy stories where I've had friends and relatives that I hadn't talked to in years that suddenly popped up and been like, hey, I remember you were the one talking about X, Y, and Z, and suddenly you're the safe, friendly person to talk to about that particular topic. So avoid the sports ball jersey mentality. Be a good human, love your neighbor as yourself, and do unto others as you would have done to you. That eliminates so much foolishness in the world. I mean, so much. I mean, that the King of Kings knew his stuff when he dropped that knowledge 2,000 years ago. So anyway, hope y'all are all having a good night. I will stop there. And I do have some other actual book-related stuff that I'm going to post up, but I really wanted to get that out there, and hope y'all are all having a good weekend.